Hello, welcome to the Hobby Hour with myself, Stuart, my good friend Dan, and special guest Tom from the Advancing Fire podcast. How are we all? How's things going? Silence, boys.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to butt in. I'm notoriously bad for gobbing off constantly, so I was trying to be polite and not let Dan at least get his feet under his own table first.
How are you, Dan?
Yeah.
You're all right.
Yeah, much better than last time. People may be able to determine from the fact
You better.
Yeah, I'm not hacking up phlegm and generally being typhoid Mary. It's yeah, much better. I've completed my course of antibiotics and caught up on my drinking since, which has been lovely. Yeah, all good.
Make yourself ill again doing that. And then we also have Tom. So Tom can introduce himself properly in a moment, but Tom was my old partner in crime on a previous podcast. Seems like quite a few years ago now, but it'll be good to have a good chat and try and keep your potty mouth in check. And yeah, we'll have a good chat about Legions Imperialis, which will be the main topic of the show today. But before we do that, we'll do the usual stuff. We will talk a bit about the news and stuff, about what we've been doing for hobby and all the usual rambling. So news, Dan, have you picked up on anything since we last recorded news-wise?
Well, nothing hobby related. So
hobby adjacent?
Well, I don't know how much you want to touch on this. This is supposed to be, an escape from the rigors of life. So, no, I mean, I don't really keep abreast of quite so many of the, shall we say, differing hobby companies as like you do. North Star, Warlord, all those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't keep abreast of that. I have to admit, I'm pretty much GW centric, and that's only because they wang so many emails at me every day. You can't help it, can you? You're practically tripping over news from Games Workshop. If they could mash product into your face any faster, screaming "buy me" at eardrum shattering volumes, they would. But I don't think even they've put too much out. They're doing a hobby advent calendar. I've not really paid attention to it. It just seems like the rumor engine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't really follow that much.
They're doing a Black Library thing as we record on a Thursday. 2 days time on the Saturday, they're doing a Black Library advanced thing. It will be the third of the End and the Death trilogy. It'll be something people will fight over on the internet, to try and get one, like Black Friday, but 10 times worse, stabbing the elderly and children, etc., to, get their book.
But that's a while off, isn't it? Isn't it a while off? Aren't they just going to be talking about it or something? Isn't it?
No, I don't know.
Part three. There's been Amazon seem to be really
February,
good for leaking release dates, and I think it's end of Jan, Feb time. I mean, so say with the End of the Death, the book is written, isn't it? It's just been broken up into three. It's not like they've released part two and now they're writing part three. I believe I'm holding pretty much all written.
I mean, you Dan knows, you probably won't know that I've read or listened to everything else.
Yeah,
I've left it because I don't want to go part one, part two, and then be waiting 12 months for part three.
Yeah,
I've literally held off until the third part's out so I can spam them all in one go. And I was hoping
we've had
out for now when I'm painting very small, tiny Space Marines. It would have been a good background.
Dan will probably know better than me, but when was part one out, Dan? Because it feels like we've had part one and part two quite quickly, and Feb for part three is not that long off as well.
I don't know. I can't remember how. I was quite mad because I missed it, the first one, so I was trying to block that from memory. But it was I want to say beginning of the year, and then they dropped this one.
Really, it's been
about a month ago.
Jeez, yeah, it didn't feel like that long between them. But then I've personally been piling back through loads of Black Library stuff anyway this year, so maybe haven't broken up as much. But yeah, it's a fair point, Stu. I mean, it is as I say, it is one book in three parts. It's not three books.
Yeah,
and I think actually, having listened to part two, it's made part one better because part one was very disjointed and.
Right.
It felt like it was setting everything up, which it absolutely was. It's the first third of a book, really. Part two has made sense of where those stories were going now and started to tie it. So actually, I've enjoyed. I look back at part 1 a bit more fondly now that I've had part 2. So doing the 3 in a row may well be a really nice experience. But I mean, I'd say you're going to need a good chunk of time to sit there and listen to it. But you've got all day, every day.
I've got the time. It's more a case of not running out of it. Really, I hate running out.
You
A series.
keep your dictionary next to the desk, especially for the first part. I'm still convinced he was paid by Scrabble Score.
Oh yeah,
first book, it was unnecessarily pretentious.
Really?
I think by the end of the first book, they'd use 70 to 80% of the known English lexicon in it.
Wow. Okay. Well, I look forward to it.
It was a little overkill.
I had a long break, Tom, from reading heresy stuff after we finished recording Gino, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I saved up the Siege when there were quite a few books, and then this calendar year, I've blasted through the Siege books until this last trilogy, and I was like, well, I'm gonna pause again now until the last bit's out. So I just didn't want to finish it. I was really tempted as well, especially with Legions being here. I was like, well, now's the time to do it. But I thought if I had to wait a whole year, it's going to really annoy me. So I've been listening to all of it.
But
so be good.
So say part 3 in Feb, but I mean, take that with I've seen a screenshot of an Amazon thing off somebody's phone, on the internet. Apply a liberal dousing of salt as you will, but I've got a feeling they want to get it done now. The hype is there, the drive is there. I think what's interesting, Dan, you mentioned the Black Library preview. Now I don't know what we'll get, but maybe we'll get an indication of what's coming after this, because you think Heresy and Siege has taken up a huge percentage of Black Library's output.
Yeah, there's what are they going to come?
Is there a prime left?
Horus has not been done.
Who? Sorry,
Horus.
Oh, very true. Yeah. No,
I haven't read that. That's one part of the Horus Heresy. They're kind of Horus.
No, that's it. Yeah,
separate, aren't they? Adjacent. I've not read all of those.
I was thinking Horus had been done, Dan, but I was thinking Alfarius, because Horus appears in that.
He's in a bunch of it, and then he's on the front of Signs of the Emperor, and he's around and about.
But he hasn't actually had a Horus primer, but but it'd be interesting, because I mean, I know there's lots of talk of the scouring and stuff, or I wonder whether they're going to move into something completely different, maybe Age of Apostasy or something like that, bring, take, not just follow the heresy through into the scouring, where that might be easy fodder to do. There's loads of good stories to be told in there, just thinking of people like Sigismund and stuff, the story of the creation of the Templars and things is a story arc and things there, isn't there? They're laying the foundations for that.
Likely, because it's close enough to the kits they sell to people. So it's all about one big money making thing, really, and it makes sense too. That's not a criticism, but to go off into something else would seem strange now, especially when they've got 2 big lines that they're trying to sell plastic for, that they've invested a lot of money into. I think you either do very close post heresy stuff and just have almost free it up a little bit, a bit like 40k novels, just have smaller mini series just detailing a campaign or something like that, or you go right back previous and do some crusade,
that kind of stuff.
I say heresy's not going anywhere. There's no way that the Age of Darkness setting is going anywhere with what they've invested into resource and plastics and scope within their sales line, in terms of bringing Age of Darkness version 2 out, Legions Imperialis out, Adeptus Satanicus. They've invested heavily in that setting. It's not going to dry up. It's just going to be interesting what that output is going to be turned to, because a lot of their prime authors have been writing for those series as well. I mean, I'm quite looking forward to Abnett getting back and finishing the Beckwin series now.
That's the thing. I wonder if they'll just let it rest for a bit, because there'll be a lot of people
Old World
have got into
Old World.
Come on to that in a moment. But there's a lot of people that will be getting into heresy through 2nd edition, through Legions, that haven't read. How you even begin to think about tackling a 50-odd book series now, I don't know. If we never going to be that many at the start. I mean, I stopped buying them out.
Actually buy them all.
I think a lot of them are out of print now.
Actual print book I bought, and the rest I've done all on audio, because it's just too much. But I wonder whether they just let it rest for a bit, and then when they bring it back, you get more growth and excitement then. So those authors, maybe they'll be doing Beckwin, maybe they'll be doing Old World.
Somewhere over there is
Dan, all we can see is
but in that gaping black hole there is up to the end and the death. I have every Horus Heresy book in print, including all the limited, all the novellas, everything. So if anyone wants to buy any, because it's incomplete, so therefore it's useless to me now, and it makes me mad.
We do the third Abaddon book as well, aren't we? So Talon of Horus and
that's all. He's been so long waiting for that. Yeah, because it's Talon of Horus and Black Legion. Yeah, we need a third one. K on the black.
Yeah, that's definitely. There are a lot of things. I mean, I've spent most of this year. I read the Gauntless Ghost series over the last couple of years, and this year I've been going back through the audios because they're nice to listen to. They're decent to listen to, and they've been redoing the audios as well. I think they've got up to Only in Death now is where they've re-recorded them and re-released them. So I've got to the end. I think what's the last one? War Master's the last. Is the War Master the last? No, Anarch's the latest one.
Anarch's the last one.
And then there was a novella that's come out, a short story novella.
Prequel.
Goes back.
The Vincula
Insurgency. Yeah. I'm jonesing for that to carry on as well. So as much as I love Heresy and I've enjoyed the Siege books, and I'm absolutely jonesing for part 3 as well. I would like to see some of Black Library's other series that maybe have not had the same level of attention over the last few years because of the focus on this to see some light of day as well. I think it's really nice. There's some really good settings. I mean, the whole Eisenhorn, Ravener, Beckwin little mini universe within the universe. I'm desperate for Henry Cavill to pick that up and look to with his 40K project.
Maybe one or two authors will be busy writing screenplays, or at least co-writing screenplays.
Yeah.
A couple of them. And they're probably already doing that if that's in the works.
What was it?
Dan Abner's
War of the Beast was good.
Record with screenplays, as he with.
Yeah, the what was it? War of the Beast.
War of the Beast was great. One or two clangers in that. That was generally a great series.
There were some ups and downs in there, but generally overall that was a good series and an interesting thing for them an interesting period for them to take on as well.
And a really, really good. Some great characters, but it's also they answered some fundamental bits of 40K lore, which was quite cool. Like what exactly Armageddon is. Very, very cool.
When I first read that, I thought, but then when I went back but then I went back and I did what's the Grimaldus book? Hell's Reach.
Yeah.
And it kind of, you were like, yeah, I get it actually. It gives a reason why that planet is so important. It's not just it takes the Armageddon setting from just being sort of we used it as a narrative thing to drive a campaign thing. It's, actually, there is a reason why Armageddon is important. One thing I'd like to see explored is the first war for Armageddon again. When Angron invades, because there's all that interesting stuff with the Space Wolves and the Grey Knights and the Inquisition after the first war. I think the first war could be something. Again,
saying no, behave.
Behave. So there is so many areas that Black Library can expand. I don't think there's any worry drop off in content. I
think they're well sorted for. I think there was. So we mentioned the old world. There was a line in the press release about the thing that says "World of Legend," and no one knows what that is. So
it'd be interesting if they rekindle Time of Legends. That'd be really cool.
I'd just like to see them brought out as audios, even if they write new stuff. They can't. The only
just put
audios you've got
trilogies in
fantasy at the moment is Gotrek and Felix and the End Times.
Yeah, Malus Darkblade would be one I'd want to see done in audio as well. Malus Darkblade's probably still my favourite fantasy.
So there's some real classics that they could probably get some sales from by re-releasing them if they can get them done as audios. And it would be cool if they brought out a couple of novels, wouldn't it? Got someone to do a small, even if it's just 1 or 2 books, not the tiny pamphlet books you used to get free with fantasy editions. Remember the Battle for Skull Pass novel that's about 100 pages and a bit.
But the Space Hulk one was actually quite good.
Which one?
Space Hulk. That was
that was pretty good. Yeah.
Did I read that? I can't remember. I remember having it. I remember having lots of those thin little pamphlet-y books that you seem to pick up 10 a penny and then never reading them. But anyway, that was that
was the news.
Yeah, that's a lot of talk about not the news. Well, it was news. It was wild speculation. That's interesting.
News now, isn't it? I don't know if I think I'm working Saturday now. I think I'm taking tomorrow off. So I think I'll be knocking around at my desk. So I might watch whatever they reveal and do on Saturday. And see what it is.
Leeds. So I'll have to catch it up.
Yeah, definitely. What we do anything exciting, Leeds?
Christmas market.
No, someone's up there.
That's what I'm doing tomorrow. That's what I'm taking tomorrow off. The excitement of the things we're doing. Anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole. Other news-wise, we did have Old World Magic talked about on Monday. I'm not going to go into a big discussion about that. It's I like it. It's good.
We just want to know whether there's pools or not.
Yeah.
Tell us, is there pools? Are we doing dice pools?
It's
again?
not. I don't think it'll be a dice pool if you're rolling
No.
plus your wizard level. I think it's going to be level 1s can cast 1 out of the 2 they have. On level 2s and 2 maybe, or something like that. That's what it'll be. There'll be some kind of limit in that sense, because the rest of it's quite simplified. So I can't imagine them adding some kind of complicated dice pool to work out. Yeah, it's not like that. No, we'll see, but I don't think there will be. Anyway, let's move on from the news. Let's get Tom talking. Even though Tom's already been talking, we've already got him talking by luring him in with book talk. So Tom is a host or co-host of the very, very good Advancing Fire podcast, which is a podcast dedicated to Legions Imperialis and Adeptus Titanicus. And he used to be my co-host on Geno 5.2 many years ago. So I've talked about it before on the show that I used to do a different podcast many years back. It's good to get him recording again, but I'm going to let Tom introduce himself first, and then talk about what hobby he's been up to. So over to you, Tom.
Yes, very true. I am your former partner before you ran off and ditched me for a different tall, dark, handsome man who sits in the dark. So yeah, I recorded the Geno with Stu for a fair few years. We got up to all kinds of nonsense over that period of podcasts and events and all kinds of general interesting things with the Geno. So my background is probably fairly typical to a lot of hobbyists my age. Played as a kid, loved it as a kid, got to a teenager, discovered girls and rugby and beer, and Toy Soldiers kind of went in the back corner. And I've never forgiven my mum for getting rid of all the stuff I have, especially all the epic stuff I had that's now come back round again. And then late 20s, early 30s, thought, don't really want to be going clubbing anymore. Oh, I know what I'll do. Oh, I would think I was in Hobbycraft and I found one of the old boxes, the 5 Space Marines and like 3 or 4 paints for sort of 15 quid boxes. Oh yeah, I'll give that a go. And then within 12 months I'd got 40k armies and cabinets full of models again, and the addiction was back full time. I'd always kind of kept an eye on it in the background. I'd played the video games and stuff that had come out over the years and things like that. But yeah. And then met Stu, when Heresy sort of launched. So we did the Geno, we ran events at Incom Gaming. I still reckon we hold the record for most players at an independent UK Horus Heresy event actually turning up. When we ran the doubles, I know people have sold more tickets, but I think actual players turning up on the day, because obviously we had 4 on each table playing double. It was the most chaotic event we'd ever run. One day, doubles broke Incon Gaming's ticketing system, oversold it by about 6 tables.
65 people, and it's quite an event. It's not big enough for 65 people.
No. It was not big. It was not big enough for about 30 people. So, but it was good fun, and it was good fun. So I think I think Greetings from the Warp may have challenged it, and Greg may have got there. Greg Dan may have got there, but I think we still might have had it. I think other people have sold more tickets, but I think we had the biggest, the actual number of players. But yeah, so anyway, after I don't know, I when I played as a kid, Necromunda and skirmish games and stuff were always my kind of forte. And then when Titanicus arrived, I'd always loved Titans. I'd always wanted a Titan. Since I brought the 28mm Warlord out, I had ummed and ahed for years about buying one, and it always came back to that. Oh well, I'll buy it, I'll build it, I'll paint it, and it'll sit on a shelf, and then I'll feel guilty that there's such a lot on it. So when Little Titans came along, I was like, well, I can have. I did the head count the last time on our last Advancing Fire podcast, and I'm at, what am I at? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20, 21, 22 Titan models now in over 3 Legios. It's just kind of everything I ever wanted from it, and I really enjoyed the skirmish game and stuff. And then Necromunda coming back, loved Necromunda as a kid, so I've been playing loads of Necromunda. This year has basically been painting a mutual friend of ours, Alex Riddix, my other co-host, Orlok gang, which started off with me saying I wouldn't mind painting a few Orlok models, him saying I wouldn't mind an Orlok gang. I've painted 30 Orlok gangers for him I think he's built me 3 Titans. He's built me 3 Titans and a Lady Hera, which, to be fair, the Lady Hera 40k Necromunda model is probably one of the fiddliest models I've ever seen put together. So I traded in that. But yeah, I spent most of the year painting Orlocks, and I've kind of, the reason there's a Necromunda scene up in Peterborough at the moment. I don't know, Dan, if you've seen the guys down at Legion now. Alex has got them all
they're
hooked.
big into it.
Yeah, I've kind of been the little pusher in the background, helping Alex and just encouraging him, getting it going. But yeah, I've been enjoying Necromunda. But Epic was always my other game as a kid, and it was always the thing that I couldn't really afford 40k as a kid, because it was expensive when you're a kid, and even at like a second and third ed, when the armies were a lot smaller, it was still a big thing to get like maybe a equivalent of a 2,000 point army on the table. And I got into, I think it was Epic 40k was the edition I got into before Armageddon. And suddenly, with one big box, I had a big army, and I could quite easily put a big army, and I could play that big battle. And I've kind of come to this realization, I was thinking about this earlier, I either like skirmish games with very few models or massive battles with loads of models. I don't like the in-between sort of 40k anymore. I want one or the other. But so yeah, Legions coming back was a big thing for me. And it was lots of debates, when AI Aeronautica came along and we had Titanicus, and it was, it's all the right scale, will they? And everyone go, no, they'll never do Epic again. Oh, no. And I've learned to eat my words now. And I've said, no, I don't think they'll do it. Guarantee the next release will be that. So yeah, so basically my hobby for the last few days since the box is all released is reading rule books, sticking models to sticks to paint them, because I can't. And lots of people have been talking about the LI stuff about painting it on sprue.
Mm-hmm.
You can't clean the mold lines.
Yeah.
You can't. And I'm being a bit pernickety. I'm scraping mold lines on 8mm Space Marines, but I've
done it today, and it's not much, and it takes no time at all. But
yeah it's just doing it on sprue. I looked at it and I was like, because your missile support squad are not in one piece, so you've got to do that. And then the way models wrap around, it's not quite clear what's in what squad. And I was like, I'm going to end up painting the whole sprue and maybe not need it. So I've stuck them all on sticks, and I sat in a hotel. I was up in York on Tuesday, and then I went to Leeds and York Tuesday, Wednesday with work. So sat in a hotel just sticking things down while watching TV was dead good. So that's it. And I have been painting bits and pieces. I've sent Stu some photos because I am one of those ones with a 3D printer. But it's normally running in the background. There's normally a soft buzz in the background.
Something extremely dodgy there, and you give a little furtive look. One of those with the 3D
printers over the back corner
behind you.
I'm trying to do it in the mirror for the viewers behind. There's my nice little 3D printing setup. It's my other hobby, 3D printing. Everyone's like, you get into it, and it'll be part of the hobby. No. It's a completely separate hobby that takes up just as much of my time. And I'm actually, where I'm sat is my work office. I'm on a really small desk where I actually earn my money and everything back in. And the temptation, the printer's running while I'm sitting here doing work. And I'm like, I'll just go and clean these prints up and tidy up. And yeah, then I've lost an hour to fiddling with the 3D printer instead of working. But I've printed up, what's quite amazing is the community has. Epic 30k was a thing for years, because 3D, the amazing thing with 3D modeling is, and the 3D community is, they produce almost as soon as a heresy model will get previewed, there'd be someone going, I made an STL of that in Epic scale. And there was a fan-made rule set. The Australian guys had made the Oz 30k guys had made a fan-made rule set based on the old Armageddon rules. So it was a thing. What they all quite sensibly done is taken the Titans from Titanicus and scaled their models to a quarter of that, because a Titan was a quarter of the scale. So there's a lot of talk about what scale is LI, and it's not really, it's very GW. It's not really a scale. It's their scale. It's what they decide it is. But it's, it is a quarter of what the full size, the nominal 28mm model is. So actually all the stuff prints. So I've got, I like some of the plastics that GW have released. I don't know, Stu, if you've had a chance to have a look at the infantry with the Space Marines.
Yeah, I've been cleaned up today. I built some today and primed them. Some I'm working on. I'll talk about. I'm working on.
A lot of the ones where the guns across the front, the tactical Marines and plastics, the injection molding limitations.
Yeah, that's what it is. People get very upset about it, but that's what happens when you see. If people wanted to glue on bolt guns, that's what you get.
I'll be honest.
3D print, you couldn't get that.
Yeah, I'd be honest. I'd have preferred to have glued the bolters on, because you're already doing it with the missile launcher Marines. I would have preferred the quality, because I've found it quite disappointing. But
Yeah,
I think that's because I've got 3D printed stuff, which
That's-
is in, and that is a totally different production method.
yeah.
So you can't
It's not
say
mass production, is it? That's the thing. People,
Yeah.
there were people that were quite snooty about it in
Yeah.
the groups as usual, and I just thought, well,
Yeah.
if GW could 3D print their stock for you, they would do that. If that was
but it doesn't
cost-effective
exist.
and they could do it. That's not in a few years. That's probably what will happen.
Yeah.
At the moment, they are restricted by the way 3D injection.
Exactly. So I'm not.
You
I
can
got
either
it.
have
No,
Marines that are flat,
Yeah.
or doing that kind of stuff, or you get those bits.
So looking at it, it's a bit like, but actually looking at a lot of people's painted stuff, and when you've got the Marine right up in front of your face and you're gluing it down, it's really obvious. Once you've got 5 on a base from a hand's distance, you're not going to notice. And actually, the biggest thing for me was what color are you going to paint those bits? Well, that's the thing. But so I've been looking at people. And I saw one guy who just painted it the armor color. And I think that looked fine.
Fine as well.
Because from that distance,
what most people do.
And then like the front of the bolter is black and silver. Yeah, it's like fine. So yeah, that once I got my head around that, I kind of got over it. The assault marines and the terminators, anything where sort of there isn't something across the front of the body, incredible. The model, like the captain, the Praetor model with the sword and the cape, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So yeah, a bit of hit and miss with that, but. Yeah, so that's been my hobby, really, is painting loads of 3D printed Space Marines. And I tell you one thing, I am so glad they did Mark 6 in plastic, because painting the trim on a Mark 4 Space Marine at 8mm, my partner almost left me because I had to invest. And this is a real treat for you and your viewers, Stu, the first public outing of my new magnifying glasses.
Yes, I've got some of those. I stopped using them. I couldn't work it. I'd find that it was too much magnification. So I would. I've got these now because I can't. I've got to that age now where anything that's closer than a foot can't focus. So this is for real work.
So I put those on in the kitchen the other day, and my partner just looked at me and she went, "I support your hobby, but please never wear them in front of me again if you ever want me to be attracted to you." So that's a long roundabout way. Is me and what I've been up to.
Awesome stuff. Awesome. Dan, what have you been up to since we last recorded?
Well, I have done a little bit. Obviously, last time we recorded, I was quite sick, and so I've taken some time to recover, to be honest. And naturally, not particularly felt like doing much apart from catch up on movies that I love, if you know what I mean. I've done a lot of that. Just sit there. You already know off by heart, so you don't really need to engage the brain. It just makes you feel good. It's lots of Arnie just shooting loads of stuff. It's great. Always makes you feel better. I have done some hobby though. As we discussed last time, both of my sets of rats turned up. So I have based those up now. They're assembled, they're cleaned up, they're based. This is a family-friendly podcast, so I cannot use the exact words I'd like to for trying to square off scenic round bases.
Yeah.
That was
a challenge.
There'll be a photo somewhere floating around at this point, and particularly the Assassin Adept from the Skittershank's Claw Pack. Yeah, which is a nice big 40mm round base with a big concave bit on it, and it's a lovely base. Cutting that square and then rebuilding the sides in plasticard.
Yeah, it's going to be
great.
I'd be using putty, I think, on that.
Well, I need to tidy them all up. There'll be a picture, as I said, and Sean, really, really lovely gentleman, sent me the zombie from the what is it? The Caesar Sigma command set. Whatever you want to call them, Duke guy. So I removed one of the vampires from one of the Cursed City sort of pillar sections and sat him on top. So he sat on top of a pillar playing his little flute. So he's going to be one of my gap fillers of my zombie unit. So he's done, and I painted one of the, assembled one of the other vampires. He's going to go in one of my skeleton units. And that's about it for hobby. I haven't really done an awful lot. I did receive something I've been waiting for a little while though, which is
very nice.
The first of the three, the sets of the History of Middle-earth. I think we've spoken about this before. When I'd ordered it, took a little while because it was due for release, and even then it got delayed. I think it was delayed by about 2 weeks. Really pretty. Versions of the History of Middle-earth in hardback. Nice. They match the sort of hardback Beren and Luthien, Children of Húrin and stuff that they did.
It's a lovely range they've got at the moment, that aesthetic. I'd like to get them, but also I know they'll just sit there collecting dust as well. So I'm trying to be good. And my shelves are
Yeah. But and then they'll release the third one of those. Books 9 through 12 will be for the centennial of Christopher Tolkien's birth, which is quite cool. So that'll be November next year. Hopefully, we want to get the last set of those. They've also re-released the letters of Tolkien in hardback, so I'll pick that up as well. And I think that's about it for me, really. Hobby-wise, yeah. Not
good
really
start,
done
though,
an
and it's
awful
nice to see those Skaven all based up and ready, because you've got to get them ready for Jan, haven't you?
Yeah, you booked the table now,
table
so I'm
booked
really
now
ought to.
at Warhammer World.
Yeah, I need to really put the bases to get them all cleaned up, and then I can begin. But I've got the bridging week between Christmas and New Year off, and that's when I think I'll do the lion's share of that. First time in a couple of years I've actually had that period of time off, which will be nice. I didn't bother last year, and then spent the entire time in between going, should have bloody booked it. So.
Yes, I know the feeling. I can't. My boss won't give me the time off around then.
He's an absolute slave driver.
He's an absolute. He's terrible. It's good.
So
No,
about you, Stu?
It's weird because I've got my. I don't think I've ever been. A couple of months out when I finished them from an organized game with my models painted.
Now that's a rare treat.
It's only a Mordheim warband, Tom, isn't it? I mean, it's and I've got a spare one as well, and all the terrains. I probably should do a couple more bits, a little bit to terrain for it, but that's a different thing. What I've been doing, chipping away at the old world stuff. So I did a Tomb King chariot for a tutorial, and that kind of got me thinking really about how I need to stop doing one model from a unit for a tutorial, and then not having time to do the rest of the models for the unit, and then doing another tutorial. This is where the YouTube versus actually finishing stuff it's a bit of a balance. So I did a little video about that recently, about how much I've got to paint, and I want to get it done by the end of Jan. We don't know when Old World's out, but we know it's going to be early next year. So if we hedge the bets and it's sometime in Jan, Feb, if I aim for the end of Jan, then it'll be close enough that I can start playing the game fairly early, rather than just sort of having to paint loads of stuff. So I've been working on that mostly, just trying to do a little bit each day, just build a few models, base a few. A lot of it's eBay rescues to clean them up, remove mold line. It's amazing how many people build stuff without removing any mold lines. Or
even the screw gubbins. There's those Skaven that turned up from Troll Trader, the ones, oh my god, they got scabies.
I don't get it on the spear. You're not like, hang on, there's half a spruce touch that spear. I'm judging people, I suppose, and that's, if they were happy, they were happy. But don't get me wrong, I'll miss a mold line. Well, I'm painting it, and I'll be doing a tutorial, and I'll be moving it around, and I can see a mold line. But at least I try. But so I've been working on those. I've done quite a bit today, just sort of spending some time here and there, chipping away, getting it done, to see how much I can get done. The Tomb Kings will be fairly easy because they're quite easy to paint. The Bretts will take their time, so we will see. Did a one strip of epic pike and shot Scots because I wanted to do a tutorial. Enjoyed it, but that's a paused project because of the old world really at the moment. But it was nice to get it out there, especially for the people who want to see those tutorials. And then I've been prepping those armies. So something, I'm going to make a prediction, Dan. So I was talking to someone else the other day. So Val from the Square Based game, in the comments, we were talking about whether the Grail Knights and Questing Knights are going to come out, and he's hoping that the next announcement on Monday is going to be not only them talking about the rules for the Grail Knights, which they've hinted at that they're going to announce a dual kit for them, and I think they're just going to come back in metal because they've already hinted at that in the release.
Or they'll come back in Finecast or
I think they'll be the old models. But my prediction is the reason they did the plastic Foot Knights kit and said there's extra bits, I think that they only had funding, should we say, to do one kit, maybe for each faction, and they've gone, look at this kit, you can build Foot Knights, and look at all these extra bits, and they're all kind of bling bits basically. So there's swords there, so you can build your Questing Knights, and there's all these really posh helms and things, and you can build your Grail Knights.
They'll use that kit almost
kit.
as Yeah,
I
they
think
use
it's
that
really
nice kit.
smart. I might be wrong, but I've got this feeling that they've gone, well, we want to do new Knights of the Realm. We want to do these 2 special units. We want to make them really nice models. So how can we do this with one kit? Hang on, if we do Foot Knights, that's something completely new. Look at the way these kits they can only be built as 2 units. It's a dual kit anyway. And you might not have seen it, Tom, because I know you're probably not following the old world, but these Foot Knights that you can build with double-handed great weapons, or you can have both swords and shields, and they've got these crazy helms and stuff, and they look kind of more special than the current mounted knights, basically. So that kit, you can basically use those parts on the existing. So that's my prediction. And maybe even they'll do an article or something saying that at some point, but I think that's what it's designed for. But anyway, I'm just putting it out there so that if that does turn out to be the case, I can say, oh, I said it. What else have we doing? I've been listening to the End Times. I ignored the End Times when it happened. I didn't rage quit fantasy. I was already playing War Machine. I'd already quit beforehand, but I never listened to it or engaged in it. But I've been listening to the audio. It's like, all right, actually, not too bad.
Not bothered with any of them. Some of them are supposed to be quite good.
Yeah, I'm near the end of the first one, and I've got the second one lined up. It's fine. It's not too bad at all. It's not bad Black Library writing, which you sometimes find. Quite enjoyed it. So listen to those, and then few shout outs. So I mentioned Square Based Podcast. Check that out if you like your Warhammer stuff. Facehammer. So Facehammer was an old Warhammer Fantasy podcast. A guy called Russ Veal used to be a top tournament player back in the day before it all ended, and Byron, who's part of Artis Opus, they used to do it. Russ still does the YouTube channel for it. He covers loads of AOS, but he started doing commentaries on all of the old world stuff. He's a really good person to listen to because this guy was, ETC England fantasy player, so was one of the top ranked each year and really knows the game very well. I know he was sort of involved with AOS at the beginning when they added points to it. It was part of the group of old fantasy players that they kind of got in and designed the General's Handbook when it first came out. So he's just got a smart head on his shoulders. You listen to him talking about rules. So just to go and check his channel out, and his AOS videos get loads of views, but his old world ones don't. And considering there's some old world videos out there, they get a lot of views. He should definitely be getting more because he knows what he's talking about when it comes to fantasy gaming. And then listen to Old World Fanatics. So that's it. That's what I've been up to. Check out those people. Nice to give them shout outs. Right, let's take a little break and come back and actually cover the topic of the show. This hobby hour is a bit of a joke, Tom. I don't think we've achieved it yet. We might do one.
I mean, we used to record the Geno on the basis of doing a 1 hour record, and I don't think we ever achieved that.
Yeah, but we went really ballsy here, and we actually called it the hobby hour. We spend about an hour doing the first bit. Anyway, we'll take a break and we'll come back and talk about Legions Imperialis. Right, we're back and let's talk about Legions Imperialis. We've got an expert on, even though the game's only been out a week or so, we've got an expert on to talk about it. So Tom, you've been primarily playing Adeptus Titanicus as one of your main games, haven't you? So you're kind of in the zone with this, and you've never really left the Heresy family, and whereas I stepped away from it, I suppose. So you've had your foot in the game with this coming along, so you've followed it all, you've read all the articles. I've been listening to your podcast. You've got as good a grounding of what the game is versus what's out there at the moment, whereas I haven't really. It's kind of, I really remember this, I love it, I'm going to buy it, but I haven't followed it closely because my head has been in old world, funnily enough. So I'm excited about it, but it's not my main game. So I thought we need to get someone on who knows a bit more, that can actually answer some questions. Otherwise, Dan and I will fumble through it. Dan hasn't bought it. Dan's not planning to either. So we'd fumble through. I can wave my box around. It's quite light when you take the book out of it. It's a very big box for not a lot in it. But there's once you've thrown away the sprues, because the minis are only that big. I'm not sure you need a box this big. But anyway, that's a different thing. Tom, give us an overview of the game from the point of view of someone who maybe they haven't got a clue what it is, or maybe they played Epic way back in the day. Now watching this thinking, what's this new version like?
So for those who played Epic before, like I said, I didn't get in at Adeptus Titanicus and Space Marine. the very first editions. I came in at Epic for 40k, which was the relaunch of those games. But essentially, the core of the game is exactly the same. It's small models, big army, mass battle, combined arms warfare. It's for those who've been around, say 40k and stuff. 40k is your skirmish, your Legion Imperialis, your Epic, your Space Marine. Is imagine you're playing at a tournament and there's 30 tables of 40k, where your Legion game is you playing all of those tables together. You're commanding all 30 of those battles together. So, instead of granularly dealing with what each model in your unit is doing against another model, you're doing, well, that unit is doing that to that unit, and that that group is doing that. It's a larger scale, I guess. For those who've played maybe the smaller scale historicals as well, it's that kind of similar kind of. I know, Stu, you've been doing a lot of your historical.
Epic, funnily enough.
Epic. I'm trying to think. I'm sure it's called Epic, but I don't know if my brain.
Games Workshop have deliberately tried to steal that back again.
Epic scale.
No, we're the owners of Epic Scale.
Epic Scale. Yeah, it's that similar principle. So your Legion Imperialis is your large scale combined arms, your flyers, tanks, infantry, titans. Your combined arms warfare. If you think to your very traditional World War II or World War One generals pushing blocks around on a table, army group style battle, that's really what this game is. It's that's kind of macro picture engagement.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I think that's a pretty good overview. I mean, I think visually it looks a bit different. I mean, I started in the editions before you with Epic originally. It felt like almost a bigger game than this. And I know you can play this big, but the way it's presented at the moment, it does look like you can get away with smaller games. And because it's 5 models on a round base, and you see that, I don't know, it looks like your 30k army shrunk down in a lot of examples I've seen, but it might just be that people aren't playing.
I think so. So to give you some context, that maybe what you're looking at in the box. Take the Marine half of the box. You're looking at a small demi company formation. It's really all you're getting at. It's a bit of a weirdly set up box in terms of what you can build straight out of it. It's not designed to be here's 2 armies out the box play.
Yeah,
it's about 400 points of Space Marines in that box. GW are touting that 3,000 points is the level. Actually, when you start to build up to 3,000 points, it's a huge amount of models. The community seems to be settling in about 2,000, 2,500 as a pickup game style points. But I'm looking at 1,000-point list for my first sort of what am I building to, and I'm looking at almost double what's in that starter box plus other things. So
wow.
It will start to scale up quite a lot. Yeah, I think we're kind of maybe used to, if you maybe compare it to the Age of Darkness box set that came out earlier in the year, where that was kind of an army, almost, it's a 2-player starter set that they released, but it's not. It's an army in a box, really, or at least a good chunk of an army. What you get in the Legions box is a much smaller chunk of a standard army. In terms of it. So it's interesting where that box is positioned, because interestingly, things, if you take the solar side of it and you take the marine side of it and you point it all up, it doesn't give you enough points in the rules to allow you to run the Warhound Titans with them, because the way the mechanics work is you can only spend 30% of your army on your what they call strategic assets, which is your Knights and Titans. Right. You need 1,050 points to get the 330 point hounds in.
Yeah,
but the models in the box don't total up to 1,000 points. So it's a weird box set they've kind of put together.
Is it this case of GW at the moment of when is a starter set not a starter set? It's not a starter set, but we've put measuring sticks and dice in it, but it's not a starter set.
Yeah,
it feels like at the moment they're battling internally of whether they want to call stuff a starter set. It doesn't essentially matter. Because you're getting a good deal on the amount of minis you get generally, but it does seem to be this. Even we had it when they talked about the old world, and they said we're not going to do a start set, and then on Twitter afterwards they said, well, there might be a launch box, and there's this whole debate: what's a launch box, what's a starter set? And it seems a little bit needlessly confused at the moment.
It's in a similar vein to the Grandmaster edition that came out with Titanicus. That was not a starter box. It was
great value, but it wasn't good, was it?
It was one of you couldn't play the game essentially to start with, and yes, logistics and packing and making boxes, and there's a much bigger commercial element to just what you throw in sprues in a box and price point. What will sell as a price point, as opposed to it's an interesting game in terms of the size and shape of it. So the box is to give you an idea of scale of battle. We were quite surprised when they came out and said it's 5x3 as a table. I think we were all kind of expecting 4x4 because the GW specialist games arena that we've kind of been inhabiting, Titanicus, Necromunda, it's all kind of been around a 4x4 table, and we've all kind of got used to that, and we kind of presumed LI will be a 4x4 table and it'll work on that. And but actually, when I've talked to a few people in the community who've started playing sort of 2,000, 2,500 points, and they're saying 2,000, 2,500 on a 4x4 is a lot of models in a small space. But conversely, I think people are forgetting from the older editions, stuff is meant to die very fast. You're supposed to be losing chunks of stuff, and if that seems to be the counter thing. So it's a lot of models on the table, but by turn 4 things have been blasted away. I'm like, well, that's kind of how the game works. It's always Epic and 40k and Armageddon. It was always you would blast detachments away in a go, but you'd have so many models. That was the feel of the game. You were supposed to be taking stuff off in clumps. Which is why, the kind of the feel of the game. But it'd be interesting. Again, I don't like to knee jerk to things. There's been a lot of like, oh my God, it's going to be such an expensive game. But interesting at the moment, what we've got is basic infantry and basic tanks. So one of the things we've been talking about in the show is, there's been a lot of maths hammer around, how strong Titans are and things. But I'm saying to people, but you're missing all the super heavies for the Astartes. There's no Fellblades or Falchions or Typhons. Suddenly, when you start putting a couple of Fellblade detachment and some super heavy detachment, I think that model count will change in terms of the actual numbers of, because at the moment, 2 demi companies at 1,000 points to do the core of that's 16 stands of TAC Marines and 2 stands of HQ. So you're 18 stands, so 18 models of 5 space. It's a lot of infantry to start building up into it.
Yes.
And a lot of our options at the moment in the game are infantry.
Yeah.
So you're swelling with infantry, but it's actually you start sticking more tanks and things in. I think the balance will adjust slightly, and it won't be such. There's a lot of worry that it's going to be super expensive. You're going to need hundreds of models to do it. Actually, I think it'll balance out when bigger things start. The model range expands.
I mean, is 5x4 going to be enough when you get up to 3,000 points? Well, I think one of the problems with smaller scale gaming is that you get table space, you've got real estate to maneuver, and it's not just a case of you walk your lines at each other, and whoever happens to be adjacent, that's the unit you fight sometimes, isn't it? And
it's having played a lot of Titanicus over the last couple of years, having a 4x4 with space down the side is essential, especially with Titanicus with terminals and things that go with it. Now, with the mechanics within LI around garrisoning buildings and being in transport stuff, you're going to need space to have models off the table. Right. And I think for me, 4x4 is always a preferable game size, and it'll be interesting to see where, like I said, where the community sells, because the driver on point size is usually, for a lot of people, what can I get done in a night at a gaming club? In a 3-4 hour window, what can I get played? Because that's predominantly where I'm going to play. I mean, there will be people who have the Saturday in their garage with their mates who can spend all day. But I know a lot of people will be playing in club scenarios, or even in evenings when you are on limited time. That'll settle it. Because again, Titanicus is geared up to play 2,500, 3,000 points of it. Now, 3,000 point game of Titanicus is a big old game of Titanicus. And if you're not switched on and know what you're doing with it, it can drag, and the community kind of settled around 1750s kind of become the sort of go-to Titanicus number. So I think we'll find that will settle in those things.
To 2,000 is going to be your evening stroke event points level, probably, and 3,000 is going to be the
big game,
the full afternoon in your garage when you got the time.
Yeah, or you go to an event and playing 2 games in a day at that kind of size. So it'd be interesting to see where how that scale of armies. And it's interesting you sort of saying, "Oh, it doesn't look like much," when a lot of the community is going, "Oh my god, there's so much to it." But that's interesting.
Sort of early perception of I suppose it's seen lots of small intro games where people don't have an awful lot. You've had the YouTubers and things that have had it early, have had it for a couple of weeks. They've painted their forces, but they're just painting what's in here, aren't they?
Yeah.
What I thought was, I just thought it looked like it worked in that small scale rather than that.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things, again, going back to Titanicus is a game that I found scales brilliantly. You can play it at 500 points and it functions. I've played doubles games of 12,000 points of Titanicus, and functionally the game works fine. It all works brilliant. You just have to, the only thing you have to work out, there's a few interactions in terms of how you do stratagems, but even actually now in the match play compendium that GW brought out, there's guides on how to deal with doubles and triples games in that. But the game scales fantastic, and I think there's a lot from LI that takes from what they've done with the Titanicus rule sets in this kind of modern style of rules writing that allows games to function through things like keywords and simplification of stuff. Like, one thing I always go back to is the AP modifier. One thing that frustrates me no end in AOD is, you got AP2, so your Space Marine doesn't get a save. Just binary, yes or no. The AP -1, AP -2, AP -3 save modifier style mechanic is fantastic. It makes it smoother and quicker, and they've taken a lot. They've gone back to very much the same style with, you roll to hit in Legions Imperialis, you roll to hit, you roll to save. That's it. You either save or you're dead. It's slick and it's smooth. So I think you'll find it will play at 500 points brilliantly. I think it will play at 5,000 points brilliantly. It's just time, and it goes back to Legion Imperialis is an activations based game, so it's not I sit here for 40 minutes while you run at me and I take my models off and then I run at you. It's you go, I go, you go, I go. Yeah. And having again played Titanicus and Necromunda, that were all GW systems on that, and Epic and Epic Armageddon were all activation based in that time. So it's funny when people say, "Oh, activation's new to GW." No, it's not. Epic and I'm not sure if Space Marine was. I think Space Marine Depth of Titanicus were activated. I can't remember, but I know.
I'm gonna go for now. I think right there.
Yeah, where is it? But Epic and Epic Armageddon were definitely activation based, and suddenly you're much more involved in the game because you're only ever one thing away from reacting. And I think one of the really, really nuanced things in LI that I really, really enjoy, and I think it's brilliant, is the orders mechanism. You place your face down orders, your hidden orders. So if any of the enemies played X-Wing or anything like that, where you put a hidden order down, but you put your hidden order down, then you roll to see who's going first in the turn. I love that simple little mechanic to go, well, I can make my plan, but I can't just plan on alpha striking you. I might go second, and little nuances in there. So I think the activation, there's loads of stuff in LI. I mean,
we'll talk. I'll get you to talk through that in a minute. Actually, we'll get you to talk through the kind of the basic gameplay and how it's turns. Before we do that, though, Dan, have you got? I know that Tom and I have been talking lots about the kind of our overview thoughts of the game, impressions. What are your impressions of it? What have you thoughts?
Well, I love tiny miniatures. I've always enjoyed. I did play Epic 40k. I tried to have a go at Epic Armageddon. It was irregularly supported, I think would be the best way of putting it. With that, I bought the rule book, and then they did some bits, and it got done through specialist, and it was. And there was a lot of metals, and you just hit and miss where you could get hold of them. But Epic 40k was brilliant. I do find it interesting how they've gone back to, because the original Space Marine and stuff was on squares with 5 miniatures.
Yeah.
And then they went to 5 in a line, and now they've gone to 5, still spaced the same way, but on rounds, which is kind of cool. Maybe a hexagonal next time.
Conga lines.
Well, the models, you can use the aeronautical bases. Put on hexes. It'd be great. I love the fact that they've brought it all together. I really want to paint the minis, but I'm holding off. A lot of this is self-preservation, because I will end up with half a painted thing of that and half a painted thing of this, and I'll never get to play any games ever, and I'll get really, really mad, and I want to throw the entire lot in the bin. So I'm doing myself a favour and staying away from it as much as I really, really would love to paint like some Space Marines. I've got no interest in Solar Auxilia whatsoever. Although Henry and Co. got a paint, so anyone interested, I've done a really good Solar Auxilia tank painting tutorial on the YouTube channel.
That one, yeah. I caught the first few minutes of the 18 Legions focusing on the tanks one. That's very good.
Yeah, that was really good. I watched that as well. But the Solar Orcs one, they did a cracking job with that. But again, no interest whatsoever in that. I don't particularly like the infantry for that, if I'm completely honest with you. I think the models are a bit... There's a certain caricature which you're going to have on an 8mm model that's taken a little far with them, in my opinion. They're a little bit funny looking. The scale goes a little bit out, which I know is semantics, but I do find people's talk about the undercuts and stuff, a little bit hilarious because...
So small.
Well, it's, they clearly haven't been around and played the game long enough, because I remember the older original Epic.
And it's not a criticism of people 3D printing. I've got a 3D printer there, but it's 3D print who have printed something and have gone, well, my 3D print's better. And
I think that was for me
right objectively, but it's that understanding of GW aren't putting out something subpar. This is what.
But if you're good at 3D printing, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, chances are he's never going to watch it. Dan, Mr. Wheeler, phenomenally talented hobbyist. He's tried his hand at 3D printing. It just won't stick for him. And he hates it. And it's made him hate the whole thing, and he doesn't bother using it anymore. It's a skill and a hobby in its own right. And you know what? Some people can't be bothered and will just throw money at a problem because we quite like, that's how I am. It's convenience costs. It has a cost. I like just going and paying the man. And I know that might make me a shill or a bootlicker, and I know I've been called that before. You know what? I don't care. No. I shall enjoy my models that have been done for me, all the hard work's done for me, because I've already got a job. I don't need a second one. So I don't find the weird little undercuts and stuff that much of a problem. Like yourself, when you glue 5 of them to a base and you hold them up from that far away and you look at them on a battlefield, it looks like 5 Space Marines stood together. They look cool. It's fine.
Yeah.
Most of these people are going to spray them with a spray can and give them a wash anyway. So I don't go by, unless you're putting 5 layers of highlighted on that. No. And even the really, really good painters, I mean, like the seriously top draw painters, the Slayer Sword winners, they're not bothering to paint them like that either. I mean, Richard Gray's been painting some of them. They look lovely, but I know that he's just not done huge amounts with them.
Yeah,
so
there's only so much you can do with them.
And said, for the rest, I'm not doing it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I'm working on tutorials for them now, and I'm, they're going to be based around a zenithal, basically some underpainting, and I'm using contrast in all of them. As part of the plan is to use Citadel paints for pretty much all of it, apart from metallics.
Well, if I was doing it myself, it would be literally a case of it all got put on lollipop sticks. They'd all get painted pink, white from the top, smash them with yellow, job done. Imperial fists, way. There would be no mucking about with it because no one cares.
No, and then the size and quantity you're going to be putting out, you aren't going to notice. I mean, as I said, for me, I think the disappointment with the undercut thing was having one in one hand and a print in the other.
Yeah.
But then when you stop and you go, yeah, but that's because that's 2 totally different things.
Yeah,
it's absolutely
wrong.
And when you put them at that range, when you put them at that range, there's no difference. There's literally none. And it was I think the momentary disappointment is I think we've all got so used to GW plastics being better than we could ever have imagined that you then go, but then, like you said, Danny, it is what it is. There's nothing they can do about it.
Reality of
it's fine. It's just I think the disappointment lasted about 5 minutes till I then cut the Terminator and went, they're really cool. And just carried on with the next thing,
And the tanks are amazing. I got to look around with the Rhino sprue, my local GW, because this month's miniature is a Rhino.
The Rhino.
I didn't take one away. I've been very good about that. I've determined there'll be none of it in my house because it's a gateway drug. Because I know if I painted one, I'd be like, you could paint a little bit, and then before you know it, problems.
Yeah.
And I've got a Mordheim warband I never intended on painting, and then I've got an old world army I never intended on having either. So cheers, Steve.
Right, so back to the rules. So, Tom, do you want to give us a bit of assume we know nothing, or no one's watched any battle reports or anything? Just a real kind of quick overview of how the game works and how the kind of a turn might work.
I won't get the
orders and things like that. How does the game work?
I won't get my Adenoids out and start going into the details of everything because we'd be here all night, but we'll give a brief summary of a round. So, as I mentioned earlier, it's an orders-based game, so give a bit of basic background. To form an army, you pick your primary army list, Solar or Legion at the moment. You build formations, so set ways of putting a group together, built of detachments, and then your infantry detachment might be a detachment of 4 tactical marine stands. So you group those together. So then your round starts, and each detachment is issued an order. It's a set of orders: move and shoot, move really fast, charge, shoot first but don't move, run away. So is your essential basic tactics. You'll place your orders blind, so face down, don't know what it is. And then, like I said, the really nice thing is you then roll for initiative in the next phase to see who goes first. And then you work through your movement phase. So you'll have set orders that allow you to move. So you've got advancing fire, funnily enough, where I got a podcast name from, which is your basic move and shoot. So in the movement phase, you'll make your move. You have advance, so you can double your basic movement. If you're all infantry, you can triple it and go fast. So that's your run, but then you can't shoot. If you go on first fire, you can't move, obviously, but you shoot in the shooting phase first. So fairly straightforward thing. So everyone does their moving, running around. You'll make your charge moves as well. So if you charge, you can move double your basic movement if it gets you into base contact with an enemy. So that's your close combat. You're punching each other in the face. Then we have the combat phase. Now, interestingly, there are subsets within the combat phase. So you go into combat phase, and then you do all your detachments have a first fire order first. So those will shoot first, and you'll work through in priority order, unit at a time. Like I said, I really like the back and forth. So you don't have that thing of, well, I've been shot at by 10 units and half my stuff's gone now. Oh, I've only got 3 things to fire back. You'll get, well, you shot me with your Titan, right? I'm going to blast you back with something else. And Titanicus is a really good example of a game where order in which you do stuff is hugely important. When you've got 5 Titans on the table, knowing what to shoot first, because if I shoot that first, you're going to be able to shoot me back. So if I shoot my Titan that you're probably going to kill first, or do I go for my kill shot first? So it's a similar mechanic of, if I don't shoot this unit first, you'll blast it. But if I do that, then I might miss something over. Prioritizing your activations is hugely important. So your first firers will go. Then your advancing fires will go, so everybody who moved and then can shoot, and then your combat people will fight, and you pair off and you fight units. And the combat mechanics, what I really love, again, is it harks back to the old school. There's no complex mechanic. You roll a dice, you add what they call your CAF, your combat assault factor, which is basically how much you punch. You add your CAF to your 2d6 dice roll. Whoever's rolled the highest, that unit survives. And that's just done, gone. Units gone. It's really brutal. Combat is decisive. It's not quite as decisive as it used to be in Epic Armageddon, where you would just keep going with the combat till one detachment is completely wiped out. You can survive and then morale and fall back and things, but the fight is fairly decisive. You roll 2d6, you add your CAF to it, one unit goes, boom, gone. It's fairly brutal. And there's lots of mechanics. If you want a detailed breakdown of stuff, our last couple of episodes, we have been through very detailed through rules and mechanics and how stuff works. So if you want to, it's a bit more of a different vibe of Advancing Fire. It's a bit more, we would describe the best review I've ever received for anything as 3 men with clearly unresolved interpersonal skills yelling about toy soldiers. Fantastic. Yeah. But we do get into the rules. Tom and Alex, who I host with, are very smart players. Tom especially is a very switched on rules person, so they've got it. But yeah, so you have your combat phase, and then you have your end phase, which is your morale mop up, break tests, falling back, rallying, all those kind of things. So a round works out, and it's activation based in every phase. So it's you go, I go, you move, I move, you shoot, I shoot, boom boom boom, you fight, I fall back, you fall back, and move through. basic structure of most of the gameplay is about objective-based missions with progressive scoring. So it's I like kind of a modern style of mission where it's not just I'm going to beat you into submission. It's I'm going to take my objectives. They've got some really interesting mechanics around how objectives are held. Each unit type has what they call a tactical score, a tactical strategy score. So your infantry have a tactical score of 5. So they're really they're really good at holding objectives. Whereas a Titan has a tactical skill of 0. So you could when you get within 3 inches of an objective, you calculate who's got the highest tactical score within the objective based on the models that are there, and they hold that objective. If you have more than double your opponent, you take the objective. If you're between double, it's contested. So you roll your big War Master Titan in, which has got a tactical score of 0, and I deep strike my 1 Terminator squadron who've got a tactical score of 5. I'll steal the objective off you. I hold the objective, not your Titan. So there's, your big combat monster Titan might blast stuff at the table. But if you just bring a load of stuff that's going to destroy stuff, but your opponent scores lots of objectives, especially in the first 3 rounds, score all the objectives, progressively score, you could annihilate your opponent, but still lose the mission. So it's really nice. You've got a nice modern sort of activation-based system, and you've got a good progressive modern objective-based scoring to keep the games interesting. So it's a game that rewards combined arms detachment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, I know, Dan, you mentioned the solar tanks, and a lot of people love the tanks and going, well, I'm just going to do a solar tank detachment. Well, great, but they don't score much objective-wise for you. You've still got to have your infantry with you to score things.
It's good, though. It's good. Last thing you want is people spamming big beastie models and sticking them on objectives that are hard to kill, and it's just not a fun game for anyone, is it?
Yeah, you've got your Titan Saturn objective. Well, I'll drop my assault marines in behind it. It can't spin around and catch me, and I'm scoring the objective off you. It rewards a more balanced approach to the game, which is definitely what Epic's always felt. It should be a combined arms. It's always brutal. Stuff dies really quickly. Stuff gets wiped out, but you need a balanced force.
I like the way, I've not read the rules. I've not had them long enough to get through them.
Yeah.
But I've watched a few bits, and I've read through the kind of the sequence, and I've got a bit of an idea of how the game works, and I quite like it. It seems good. It's one of those you sometimes you read a set of rules and you think you either don't understand it, or it's a kind of, I get that and I can see how that will work. Yeah, it seems logical. It seems to make sense to me.
Yeah.
I quite like the way you pair up the stands in close combat. It's like Middle Earth strategy battle game, that, Dan, I think. Try to pair them off as much as you can. It's just some really good things, and then like Tom just mentioned there, the way the objectives work and that combined arms thing. It's good. It seems all right.
There's some useful stuff like the if you're behind the tank, you get +1 to your AP. Makes sense.
It's really, they've taken stuff, like from Titanicus, where if you shoot something in the side of Titanicus, you're +1 to your armor roll. Shoot in the rear, you're +2. You simple mechanics that make a difference to the game, but aren't hard to administrate. There's lots of smart rules decisions been made in there. There's definitely stuff. I've had the rule book, and I've been chewing through it and discussing with my co-hosts a lot. Like I said, they're quite rules hungry, so they'll digest a rule book quite quickly, faster than me. There are bits in the game that I want to. I'm a learner by doing, so I need to get and start playing and doing stuff. There's things about when formations become broken, when you lose half the models out of it, you become broken, which means you can only take certain orders. You can't do the full suite of orders, but there's a difference between broken and falling back and retreating. So it's learning the difference between various things and some of the combat mechanics and just how you quite pair that all off and stuff. But fundamentally, the rule set, it feels very much like Titanicus. Yeah. It feels very much in that modern GW rule set with Necromunda and things like that. And like I said, strategy battle, there's definitely crossover where it's recognizable as a system. And you go, okay, fundamentally, I get how these things work. And I think it'll be a case of then I think a lot of it, from what I've heard and talked to people who've started playing games, it's learning all the key words and the special rules. What does that, what does light AT do again? What's AT do? Just remembering those things that as you play, they'll come. But a lot of people saying fundamentally the mechanics of the game work really, really nicely, and it seems to play enjoyably.
What about army building? Because I like generally when you can flick through a game and work out how armies are built fairly quickly. And I tend to find this is a failing of mine, this isn't a criticism of any games, but I end up buying miniatures because I love toys and I like painting them. I end up wanting to know what I want to buy before I've read the rules. Always. It happens in nearly every single game. And I have found that it's I need to sit and read this, how to organize an army. It's not something that's quite as straightforward as it might be, or maybe it's just because it's unfamiliar.
I think
how have you found army building? Is it something you could sum up?
Yeah, I think it's a terminology thing. I think the first thing to get your head around is the terminology, because we're all sort of used to units and in an army. You've got detachment, formation, army, essentially.
Right.
So your detachment, if you think about it in a Age of Darkness 40k way, your detachment is your unit.
Yeah.
Whereas we're used to, 5 Space Marines would be 1 unit of Space Marines. A unit of Space Marines a unit of Tactical Marines in LI is 4 bases, because that's your detachment. So you buy, your demi company, which is your fairly standard thing, is an HQ and 2 core detachments. Right. So that's your HQ. That's your five models on a stand for your HQ. Yeah. Your Legion Command Squad is a detachment of 1. So it's 1 base. And that's your banner guy, your sword guy, your HQ squad. Your core formation is then your tactical Marines. Now your tactical detachment is a tactical detachment of 4. So it's 4 bases. So your unit is 4 bases. So again, I've kind of in my head, you think about each base of 5 Space Marines. I think about that as that's the model, and it does say that is the model. So, your squad of 5 Space Marines, you'd have 5 Space Marines. Now you've got 5 bases of 5 Space Marines, if that makes sense. That sort of makes it. You've got to think in not 5 Space Marines on a base as 5 models. The 5 Space Marines together is 1 model. So you're basically filling your detachments up with it in your detachment. So then you'll have your core and your support. So your support might be your missiles and your dreadnoughts and things like that. So whatever those are, you fill up your compulsory. So each formation has 4 compulsory choices. 3 or 4 compulsory choices. 3 or 4. We'll have 3 or 4 compulsory choices, and then you'll have, quite interestingly, the options on the side are interesting, because you'll have one chunk which is basically you can have 1 of any of these things. Then there's a line which is 1 of either of these things. So I think the demi company is heavy armor. It's a battle tank or an air support. So you can have an air support or you can have a battle tank. But whereas your other choices might be a couple of supports and some more cores, and you can have as many of those selection of 5. But then there's an either or, and then another either or. So it's quite interesting. How they've used the mechanics to. You've got your core, then you've got your primary set of attachments, and then you've got some choices. Do you want to take tanks with this formation, or do you want to take planes with this formation? So there is, it does take a little bit. There's a really, really good website called Legion Builder, .vexel.app or something. I can't remember. I can send you the link, Stu, and you can put it into your notes somewhere.
Yes, I will. Yeah.
And it's really good for, again, I'm quite a visual learner. And it just has the boxes, and you click in it and you dunk into it.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that I had to get my head around a little bit is so let's go back to your tactical detachment. The tactical detachment is 4 stands of Space Marines. Then you've got options to add in. So you could add in more squads of or more bases of tactical Marines, but then you can also add missile stands to it. So you could add 2 heavy support stands or 2 plasma gun stands into that detachment, as well as them being a standalone unit as well. So there's a bit of, sometimes you have to think about it. And then if you add your missile launchers into your tactical detachment, they've got to stay within the coherency of those models. But if they're separate, you could deploy them somewhere else. So
they have to fire at the same thing as well.
Yeah, they fire at the same targets.
I not always want to.
Yeah, so there's some nuances in how you structure where you put stuff. But for example, if you put the missile launchers in your tactical squad, your minimum detachment size for them is 2. Whereas if you have them as separate, their detachment is 4. So they'll take up more points separately. So it's really nice when you start looking at it. It's quite easy to build the core of a list. You go, okay, HQ, 2 troops, and I'll take my dreadnoughts. Then when you start tweaking it and start, like you do when you build a list, you put your sort of core things I want in straight away.
Yeah.
And then filling those extra points around, and then starting to move stuff around.
You realize you
hang on, if I want to put that in, I'm gonna have to drop. So like, I wanted to, for my 1,000 points. So for every 1,500 points you have in an army, you have to have a detachment. So formation. Sorry. So 3,000 1,500 points, you have one formation. 1,501 points, you've got to have two. So on, so on, and so on. So then I was like, oh, well, I'm going to build 1,000-point list. I'm just going to use one demi company and I'm going to put them in. And I've got Sakarans and I've got Predators. Both of them are battle tanks. There is only one option to take a battle tank in that. So I was like, oh, but if I want to take my Sakarans and my Predators, well, I'm going to have to do a second formation then. So I'm then going to have to spend some points on more. It's a really interesting way to build an army, because it's quite simple at the start, because it's sort of plug, and then the nuances come in later. So if you wanted to throw, do you want to throw a few, I just want to put some models on the table, you could build a formation, a basic formation, very quickly out of the box there. If I've got an HQ, I've got 8 stands of troops, okay, I'm off, I'm going then. Then when you start building into it, it's quite good. And then there's, like I mentioned earlier, nuances about what you call your allies. You get your 3,000 point list. You have to take 70% of those points from your primary army list, so your Solar or your Legion Astartes. And you can spend up to 30 points on allies, essentially. So that's your Knights and Titans, and if you want Solar in or something. Now you could have a Titan and a Knight, or some Solar and a Knight, whatever you want to do, but you've got a 30% cap. So there's some interesting. You've got to, if you're doing that, you've got to have 2 formations in your primary army list, because we're over 1,500 points. So you've got to spend so many points on that. Then you've only got this many, so there's some interesting balances to how it's one of those kind of classic, simple to get your head around to start with. And then when the nuances start to come in, it gets quite interesting, list building. But the Legion Builder app that the community's done its amazing thing and already knocked out, stuff to help people with.
Good.
When you can start visualizing it, that for me really helped with the list building, because it was like, okay, click drop down box, I want one of those. Click drop it. All right, and there's my options for that unit, and there's my options for that unit. Then,
so I didn't order any of the cards, and I didn't even look at them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So are the cards just there for stats, or are they for army building as well? Because I remember back in the day, you built your army by literally
cards.
Yeah, it was a lovely way of doing it. But
that's
not
cards
needed in the modern age with clickable army builders.
Yeah. So I ordered the majority of my stuff. I got a box, big box, Rhino box, and a Kratos box. I bought them through Income Gaming, who I'm sure you've probably mentioned, Stu, our local FLGS. Got those on time. I ordered the cards direct from GW because they were direct only. I still haven't had a dispatch notification for them yet. I ordered them. Got the confirmation order 53 minutes after release. So I was pretty quick ordering. I don't know. But anyway, the dispatching and selling is a whole different topic. Struggling. Let's not get bogged down in that. So I haven't seen the cards yet. I would say, from what I understand, they're not essential. They're going to be a handy reference, but again,
they've gone now anyway. So
you've got. I tend to buy the EPUB rule books anyway. I tend to take my iPad with me. I've done for Necromunda and Titanic, especially. Necromunda is spread over so many rule books now. Having a library, I take my iPad with me, all my books with me. So I bought the EPUB book to sport, and having that bookmarked. I think the interesting,
lovely, but it will sit on the shelf. It will be the digital version that gets used in games.
Yeah, in terms of going to the club and playing a game, having my iPad with all my resources on is much easier. The rule book I've flicked through it, I've sat and it's been nice to read and got the fluff, and I definitely enjoy it more as an item, but as a practical gaming thing. And I think the cards, the thing that would be useful for is having them laid out aside for things like when you're putting your models on, so what was in what detachment, what was in what formation when it's garrisoned, and but nothing that I don't think you're going to get to a game and think, God, I really wish I'd bought those. And if they become essential, the community will do their thing and they'll produce their own.
Yeah.
Yep,
absolutely. So let's move on. So we touched on models a little bit, and I don't want to circle back round to undercuts on plastic injection molding, but more what's available in the range at the moment. So you've already hinted at there's stuff we know that's coming because we do the heresy range. You know what's in the universe. You can guess there's going to be other stuff coming. What's out at the moment? What kind of armies are people building? What model?
Yeah, so the core we've got at the moment is your infantry, tactical marines, plasma marines, missile marines, terminators, contender dreadnoughts, rhinos, kratos, Sicarans, predators. So a very core kind of base unit of it. We know lots is coming because we've seen them in previews. We've seen previews of Spartans and Land Raiders and drop pods and all kinds of rapier batteries and loads of stuff. And Solar have got their Russes, Malcadors, Bane Blades, flyers. We know what's in the flyer range from AI. All the Imperial Army, Imperial Navy stuff is back, but we've only got the Thunderhawk for the Astartes, so we know there's more flyers coming. But essentially, the answer is whatever is released in 28mm Age of Darkness. There's no reason it shouldn't. I think the interesting thing will be how much infantry they reproduce, because they've done a Mark 6 tactical squad. Is there a need for a Mark 3 and a Mark 4 and a Mark 2 and a Mark 5? There's no difference.
If it will sell, then yes.
If it will sell,
they've got other priorities first.
I think they will be a long way down.
It's selling well, and they go, well, how can we boost sales again?
Yeah.
Or we'll release a second edition of the game.
And we'll do Mark 4s in. Yeah. Like I think we'll see. Hopefully, we'll see things like breacher squads, because they're very peak heresy, and they mechanically within the game can bring something different because you've got different equipment. So I think there might be stuff like that. We know the full range of tanks coming. It would be mad if there was stuff that's not in the range that doesn't. I think some of the interesting stuff might be the stuff that's not ported over to plastic yet. So I'm thinking fell blades, glaives, those things, those large heresy forge world resin kits, artillery,
because you can actually use it properly. Because that was the scary thing about Epic 40k. Was Imperial Guard artillery.
They're terrifying.
Vortex. Oh, there we go. Game over.
It was interesting because I remember I was chatting to the Tempest Standard guys, and they were saying, actually, historically, Space Marines have not normally been the strongest in epic scale. Imperial Guard at the time, or was stronger in epic because you had. I remember facing down squadrons of basilisks, and then some. What's the big missiles, Dan? The
Death Strike.
Death Strikes, and you're just sitting there thinking, watching my Space Marines evaporate. Bombard,
used to make a mess. And then it was interesting because the tanks used to have different functions, like Griffins and stuff were attached to infantry rather than artillery companies or detachments as they were at the time. And then you have your super heavy detachments, 3 Shadow Swords kicking around the back of the board. So it was. I mean, they'll be interested to see how that happens going forward. Do you know what I found interesting though from looking at the rules is because I personally never got on with AT. I mean, as you know, I painted an awful lot of Ignatum. Played one game of it against one of your co-hosts and immediately went, I don't want to play that again.
Yeah, but I have the same problem with him playing that, and I've played him multiple times.
Because I just, it's what I love the idea of it, and it's been regularly described as the best battleship game on 2 legs. Because it's. I'd be very interested to try and play some games of AT using these rules.
There's a lot of talk.
Simple.
That. I think because there's been a lot of talk. Could you do massive AT games using those rules?
Quick.
Quick. And I think for me, the fun of AT is the detail of it. That is what I like at AT. I totally get where you're from, Danny, because you're talking to somebody who is died in the to the core AT player. Absolutely, it's one of my favorite games I've ever played. I totally get the appeal for it, but I think the joy of AT, but it's to tempt you in and get you hooked. Definitely, let's play it. Or let's play the AT. We'll play with the LI rules, so you can move your models around the table and have some fun. Do you fancy maybe trying with a terminal? As a way
what
in.
Annoyed me is the fact that it's very hard unless you artificially end your game early. The game of AT can go on for a long time if you're not careful.
Depends how aggressive you are.
Yeah, it depends on the matchup. It depends how well versed, but they can take a long time to get through, and especially because it can get a little bit dull.
I think one of the interesting things with AT is how you introduce people into it. So when it originally launched, I played a bunch of games. Then I sort of kind of had a mellow beat, and then me and Henry from Carter Paint started playing regularly. But both of us like, well, we haven't played for a little bit, right? And we stripped the game right back to start with, and we took out all the Legion rules and took it right back to basics. And AT is a really interesting game where you can play it with almost none of the rules in, just the basic function of the game, and it runs, and then you can layer up. And if you start playing at full, Legio rules, maniple rules, terrain, blah, 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 there is a lot, and it will grind down because you do need to look at things constantly. And there's going to the terminal back and forth. I think if you bring stuff in gradually, you build that core fundamental. So I can whip through a 3,000 point game of AT fairly quickly now because I'm not looking at things half the time. I know what I'm doing with it. I know what I'm doing. So yeah, I do get it. And I think definitely, there's been a lot of people who want to run all Knights or all Titans in LI, and personally, I'm not a massive fan of that because I think if a Knight Force I kind of get. A Titan Force, I'm like, well, if you want to play with all Titans, play AT. But like I said, I'm a big apologist for AT. But definitely, let's say if you've got Titans and you think, I just want to push them around the table, well, let's just play within their live rules then. It will functionally work. It will do everything it needs to do, and it'll be fun.
It's what type of game? Because I bought into AT and I only played the one game. I was against you, Tom, and it wasn't a bad game.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
but I wasn't desperate to go back and play
that's it.
Again, it felt.
But I don't want to paint Alex wrong.
Nothing wrong with the game.
Paint him wrong.
Is what I was.
No, there are many things I could say about him, and it wouldn't be that. No,
I suggest you go and listen to our last episode. Listen to me yelling at him about maybe the last episode, maybe the one before, about when we played at Greetings and he dawn attacked me with his horrific Volpa list, and it lasted. I think it lasted a turn and a half before I was calling him all kinds of things under the sun. So no, he's not like that. Well, but it is fun.
I beat him when I played him.
Yeah,
but it's not that. It's just it just didn't.
It goes back to that hook.
I'd be more inclined to want to play it using these rules and getting the minis on the table than I would.
Because I love the minis,
and again, it's nothing to do with. There's nothing wrong with the game. It's just that I don't want to. I don't want a simulation of being a Titan princess.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
battlefields. So it's just one of those. You got both options now, haven't you? Depending on what you want to do.
I mean, you flip it around like. I'm looking at the old world stuff, and I know how much you two both love the old world stuff, and I really like the look of the model stuff. But the game, I'm still got trauma. I'm traumatized from my older brother, and me playing fantasy back when we were kids, and him absolutely destroying me because I didn't know how to play. He never taught me any of the rules. He just told me when to take stuff on the table, and it doesn't
smash you with 6th edition Wood Owls, I think, didn't he?
Just
multiple spore units.
Skirmish unit.
They were. Well, you described it to me. They were pretty filthy back then.
Insanely specialist, very, very good at killing stuff. Skirmish units.
And I didn't really
I've got
know
15
the
war dancers.
Yeah. And I was
and a tree man.
2.5 years younger than him, and just playing because he was saying, well, and he would literally like, well, move that unit there. And then I go outside because I didn't know what I was doing. So it just doesn't hold that buzz for me. Whereas, like I said, there's a huge thing with. I mean, what makes me laugh is I play Epic and I play Necromunda now. I could be 12 again. That's what I was doing then. It's both of those game systems have that nostalgia drag for me.
Yeah.
But they also do it for me on the modern kind of. I get the enjoyment out of the game and the system now, so I totally get. Like I said, you played.
It's interesting. None of us are playing 40k.
But I'm doing the same. This could be 1991, 92 for me now. I've got Epic. I've got Fantasy coming back.
Yeah.
And then I did dabble in a bit of 40k back then, but they weren't the main. They weren't the main things.
The only one I didn't play when I was younger, and I'd like to come back is BFG Battlefleet Gothic, which I assume will be Battlefleet Heresy, because everyone's told from talking to people who played it, they're like, if you like AT as it is now, it's that same kind of thing. It's that. Like you said, that it's battleships on two legs, AT. So
conversely, I would probably accept that kind of level of complexity more for a spaceship game.
It's
Again, it's just what's here and here. There's nothing wrong with the game. It's not criticism of AT. It's a brilliant game, and I enjoyed it. But I got to the end of it and thought, you know what? It's not what. Basically, I wanted. You know what it was like. I was trying to work out rules for inventory back then, wasn't I? Can you remember?
Yeah, you wanted epic.
I wanted epic, and that's essentially what it was. I wanted epic.
Yeah,
and I think that's it, because I was Battlefleet. I think I preferred the way that played in that granular level. And the other thing is, I've played Mech Warrior. Yeah, it kind of does what AT does better.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it does.
Yeah. No, I've never played Mech Warrior, but I've heard it's a really good system. But
there's a lot of tables, but
the overarching thing I think to look back on, the thing to take from this little discussion, especially, is look how well catered we are for games now. You know, when I jumped back in all those years, a few years ago, it was 40k, tail end of fantasy. That was pretty much the only games being produced. Age of Darkness was about, but it was an additional rule set to 7th Ed with Forge or limited support. Now we've got such a broad range that actually we can all sit here and go, yeah, that's a cool game, but it's not for me. And I've got 3 other games that I want to play. And actually, one of the things I constantly find myself saying is just, I'd love to play it if I had the time. I don't know if you've come across Moonstone, Stu and Dan.
I've seen it.
It's Chip at Incom is massive into it, and he every time I see him was like, play Moonstone, it's the best game ever. And I look at it, I'm like, it looks really fun. The models look insane. They're incredible. It's a skirmish fantasy game, very high kind of fantasy, kind of fairies and elves and mushroom people.
Really good fun.
And I'd love to sit down and play some, but I just keep saying to him, like, I don't have enough time to play the games I've bought into. I don't have the time for that. And that for me is always, because like I said, I look at the old one, I think, oh, it's really cool. And but if it doesn't have that, oh my God, I really want to play that now, it's competing against games that do have that draw. So I'm like, well,
totally with you.
I can't give it the time, you know, which is a shame.
I'll have 2 armies at least very early next year anyway, Tom.
Well,
so
Mordheim's an answer.
Yeah.
Because you get all the glory of the old world setting, but you only have to paint 10 to 15 miniatures.
And that's why I like skirmish games a lot, you know. I mean, I was always my thing with Necromunda. Oh, I only need 10 models. I've got 35 Caldor models. I've painted nearly every house gang. But I love it because I can paint bits and pieces of stuff. And skirmish games, as an older gamer with time constraints of a family and jobs and stuff, that's why, like, LI has been I would say is a huge commitment for me in terms of my hobby time, because it is going to require vast. I'm working on the basis that they're small so I can rattle them out fast. But, you know, I'm looking, I've got stacked up there about 20 lollipop sticks full of models. And you're thinking, that's a lot of models I got to rattle. I mean, to be fair, once you get into it, it's probably not going to take that much time. But it's a big commitment to play that full-size game. I mean, okay, again, I've gone in deep on Titanicus, but when Titanicus came out in 2018, I've had 5 years to build that collection. You know, 20 models over 5 years is still not a lot of models over that period of time to have a very, very big collection of stuff. So, yeah, LI is a big commitment for me, but it's it's the game I've been waiting for.
Yes, good. Right, then. So you mentioned briefly resources. So you've got the website, the Army Builder. Are there any others out there that we should send people to that we can?
At the moment, the list builder is the really big one. There's a lot of YouTube stuff in terms of hobby. Grim Miniature Games have done some nice intro videos. Battle Bunnies have done some interesting. Done a battle review as well. The Legion Builder app is the big support from the community at the moment. There's, again, depending where you are with 3D printing, there are a lot of 3D printing resources, from straight up units to more interesting things. So I'm on the Grimdark Terrain Patreon, and he has been knocking out Titanicus terrain, which is now obviously just adapted to bring some ruins in. I'm 3D printing terrain. That's obviously quite a big draw for, you know, at the moment it's having to build tables and terrain. He's got order tokens, things like that. Lots of support like that. I did spot earlier the Thunderhawk I painted up recently. I don't like the Aeronautica flying bases for Legions because it's quite low. I think it works in the Aeronautica game, but I think when you've got buildings and stuff, you want your flyers a bit higher. So I've used some 3mm acrylic rather than mounted it on a 40mm base just to lift the Thunderhawk. Yeah,
you want it above your buildings to be a bit. You don't. It's a bit weird.
Yeah. So it's nice and high. And I had a few comments from people. Oh, where'd you get the flying base from? I said, oh, it's just acrylic rod and built. But then somebody popped up and said, actually, there's some 3D printing files for some taller bases. So there's loads of resources out there from 3D printing, again, I think the scale of the game, it's kind of a 3D printer's heaven, that. So there's lots of resources if you're into 3D printing. The list builder is really good. There are Facebook groups, usual stuff. Shameless plug for our podcast. We're an internet resource out there as well. Like I said, slightly more yelly, slightly more frantic. It's more like three mates in a pub talking around a table. We're not
the content's great.
The content's great,
but if you don't like swearing, but if you don't like swearing, go and listen, because it's really, really good.
Yeah. If you don't mind a bit of bad language and a bit, I would describe it as good-natured pub banter, sort of banter you have with your mates after two and a half to 3 pints. But we are sober, but we just get at each other. But so there's lots of stuff out there for it at the moment. But the Legion builder, I think, like you sort of indicated, list building, it's not the most immediate, obvious way, and I found that going to the Legion builder website,
that's
really
exactly the answer.
Click. I can just click the drop downs, and all right, there I've got it then, and it lays it out for you.
Good. I will be playing with that as soon as we finish recording this, I think. So Dan, you had a question around 40k era.
Well, it's not so much a question; it's more of an observation of some of the discussions that I've seen as off the back of the promotional material that GW have been putting out and the general discussion, predominantly on Twitter, or X, as you want to call it these days, for however long that lasts. It's a lot of people obviously saying, I'd really love to, but I wish it was 40k. I mean, there are always people who prefer it to be in their setting. There are some dyed-in-the-wool 40k people who hate heresy on principle. I don't quite get why. Maybe they just say, it's just Marines against Marines. It's not, but I understand why you feel that way. Mechanicum, etc. There's plenty more opportunity, but I mean, I think there are some obviously practical constraints. I mean, if you actually look at the original Adeptus Titanicus, it's literally because they could only afford to do one sprue, and they did it in blue and red.
That's what made the heresy. That was the whole reason the heresy was invented, to justify
Space Marine,
just making Space Marine on Space Marine fighting.
So it's I mean, obviously they could only do X amount. They're not going to release 7 or 8 different factions. I mean, if you look at the original like Epic 40k, they did Orcs and Space Marines, and everything else came later. It was a little while before you start getting Tyranids and things.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. You can look at AI, which is the first time they've done a specialist game and support it in an epic scale that supported the 40k environment. And I mean, anecdotally, the sales has been quite poor outside of the Imperial stuff, because I mean, I'm not disparaging the Xenos, because I like the Xenos and everything, but it is not the core appeal in it. Having played AT for 5 years, almost every week you'll go in a group and they'll be, when we get Eldar Titans, when we get Orc Titans, and it's an absolutely valid comment. I totally get it. And I think the reality is it comes back to that practicality issue again of, well, they've made 2 sets of models at the moment, and you've got 2 complete factions, humans and Space Marines. But the Space Marines is not one faction, it's 18 factions that fight against each other. You've given yourself huge detail. And I mean, I remember the old heresy, it was just Space Marines on Space Marines. Not when you've got 18 different flavors of Space Marines that do very different things, and such a broad range of, I mean, I know that there was talk when 40k went to 10th about how many units there were for Space Marines, but actually in the heresy, there's a huge range of models, and that's what makes the flavor, because each legion does things differently with different models, and it's brilliant. But again, it comes back to practicality. I mean, I remember the specialist games days first time around, and it did. There was an element that it died because they diversified so much, and it takes production time. It takes shelf space to store it in warehouses, in shops. It becomes a burden. SKU codes that have to be filled up for them. If you're not selling a huge amount of them, is it worth it? Whereas heresy sells, and it's essentially one set. You make a Spartan sprue, and you've got 18 players who each play a different army that all might want that sprue. The range of that model, and I think it is. I think you'll find the community does exactly what it does before. There are all the 3D models out there in the world for it. Somebody will write a codex for it. Somebody will generate it. If you are that keen on it, somebody will make it happen. But again, I mean, for me,
most of the time it's a throwaway complaint, isn't it? But
yeah, but you can do something about it now. I think the interesting with where we are with Heresy, again, it was always just Space Marines. Well, no, you've got Space Marines, Solar Auxilia, Mechanicum, and then the Talons as well. So you've got Custos and Sisters. You've got 4/5 very different armies within that. You've got your sort of mass humans, you've got your elite humans and Space Marines, you've got your Gribbly Mechanicum, and then you've got your elite, super elite humans.
And then the different ways to play them as well.
Play those within it.
But
I think
it's like anything. When you're in that community, you understand, and you like the lore, you understand it, and it's rich enough for you. I imagine a lot of those comments come from people that are more in the 40k community.
Yeah, I know.
Are they kind of 40k focused? They're also buy their products from a side of the studio that works very, very differently. So the studio is completely differently from SDS and the resource. And you've already mentioned all of the SKUs and all the resource in that side of things.
Yeah.
Let alone the amount of writers and people they've got to design things. And it was just never going to be possible for them to release this as a 40k game unless it was going to be a core game
mainline
come out of the mainline of the studio. And it's never going to be. They've got 2 core games. And that's it now. And then Heresy's got big enough that it's kind of got one foot in both.
Half and half, isn't it? Yeah.
It's kind of half. It's got its own studio now, sort of thing, hasn't it? Half out.
Yeah. I think they're looking at Heresy. If you took Heresy as a setting, you could argue it's a mainline. But if you take Age of Darkness, Titanicus, Legions now, you could say that probably generates a core product's worth, a core setting. In fact, you've got 3 core settings. You've got the 40k universe, you've got the AOS universe, and you've got the Heresy. I know it's the same universe, but that kind of area.
And that's
those
really
are their core settings now.
You can make sure those releases don't butt up against. There's no point in releasing a new Age of Darkness big release the same time as an LI release. They need to that as a you'll get as a setting in terms of a product setting.
Yeah, but if you look at a plan, their plan for the year, you'll have your AOS big thing, your 40k big thing, and then your Heresy big thing. Now the Heresy big thing might be AT, LI, AOD.
Yeah.
But it will be planned in that universe, and then there'll probably be a separate sub plan and go, well, we're doing LI now, and then we'll go back to 28, and then we'll do we don't know what's going to happen with AT going forward. I mean, it's not a massive problem. AT is a thing in its own. If it stays the way it is forever now, it's a complete game. It works really well. We've got 3 compendium books in the Loyalist, Traitor, and Match Play Guide, and the campaign compendium. Those 4 books, everything's together. It works. It's functional.
Yeah,
it can sit there now. The model's going to be supported through LI. AT is great. It's over there now. So
kept up to date with some FAQs and things each year.
Yeah, we get a model here and there, and some new guns and stuff. It'll just keep the game fresh. So
let's hope they slow the release cycles down a little bit, so they got a bit more time, especially with Old World coming into that as well. Something that, regardless of, I think it'll be fairly big, but it's not going to be AOS or 40k big, but it's also going to require a lot of plastic. So there's going to mean a lot of resource.
I
wait till you can't buy AOS players can't buy AOS figures because all these players want to play Old World and buy all of the Scape and all of the Lizard. That's going to happen.
I can't get hold of the skeletons at the minute.
Really?
Both times that I've tried, I was able to get Death Rattle.
Yeah, that's going to be that's not AOS.
It'll be interesting to see what the delay to LI, what impact that has on Old World in terms of, the LI was supposed to have been out for months by now. It's run that release much closer. I don't think there's going to be issues in terms of, product and selling but having 2 new game systems released this close together, and there's going to be overlap. And I wonder, people whose hobby would cover both, where their hobby budget is now going to feel pressure because they've bought LI and very quickly having to go on to
affected me loads. So I had lots of content for the channel plan with this, and this was kind of going to lead me through this whole autumn. And now this is going to be much smaller in the short term, and will be something I chip away at slower in the background. And I would guess, and I don't have any access to figures, but I would guess that the Old World will be bigger. You look at the relative Facebook groups, not always the best thing to go on, but the biggest Facebook group world for a game that's not even out yet is there's over 40,000 people in it. You look at the Epic groups, they're much smaller. So I think that this will suffer, sadly, because the old world will come out whenever it is January, February time. And I think that this could suffer a little bit. There'll be people now that were thinking about getting this, will just be saving their money for the old world. And I know a lot of people that are waiting for the old world that haven't bought this, that may have.
Be interested to see though, because I mean, admittedly, I'm not on every. I've not seen an awful lot of people painting LI, but I've seen an awful lot of people whinging about it being sold out. So I don't know how much they actually put on sale.
There's been a lot of talk about it. I think the issue is distribution. From what I understand, it's not product, it's distribution. They've got the stock, it's getting it out of the warehouse that's been the issue.
They've sold out.
5 or 6 people have been delayed.
That's not
huge. I mean, Elements so say got less than 25% of their pre-order delivered on time. You know,
mine was held up because of that.
Yeah, vast. I mean, I was very impressed with Incon with Chip. He got everything through. I mean, he probably ordered in a much less quantity than everybody else. But, you know, I'm amazed he hadn't had more problems, because everybody seems to be hit with problems. So I think it's dispatch as opposed to purchase. But the dispatch issues have definitely...
You can't buy the core box anywhere now, though, can you?
You can't buy the core box anywhere now, but the dispatch issues will have tempered people's enthusiasm as well. You know, if you've had to wait 2 weeks for your box, it's that kind of new excitement's gone. And I definitely think that's going to have an impact going forward. They're not going to capitalise on the excitement at the start as much, and that's going to have an impact on it. But I think it'll settle, it'll run as it is, and I think there's definitely going to be a crossover between Epic players and Old World players, because it harks back to those older ones. I think Old World's going to have a bigger following to start with, because there's a much less gap between the end of that game system and it coming back, whereas Epic was a much bigger gap. People have drifted away from it, whereas you've still got probably people who was... I mean, I did the Specialist Games Weekender up at Greens from the other week last year, and they were running a... Dan, were you there? Was it 6th, 8th edition? They ran an 8th ed tournament there, and that was still well attended. People were still playing their stuff there, whereas seeing somebody playing an old game of Epic was far, far rarer in that, you know. So
I think they'll both do well,
but I will reflect. You're right.
I think they'll both impact each other, and some people will just be able to only afford one, and people who couldn't buy it back. It was supposed, wasn't it September? I think they said, didn't they? I think it's September.
It was going to be August. It was supposed to release.
So people who had the money then, who now got to this stage, especially if they didn't get it, especially if they went click and sold out, are now thinking, well, do I wait for it to go back in stock? How long is that going to be? Stuff from China.
And if they were half thinking about Old World, they might go, I'll stick my money in Old World instead.
So so I think it will balance out. I think people will circle back to it. But I think it was a shame, because I think it'll have an effect on both games to a certain extent.
But I think in the long term it will balance and it will settle, and people will find their way into what they want to do. But it's a shame that it definitely, you can tell it's not what they wanted as a business, and there'll be people going, "This is the only."
For the designers who have been working on this for God knows how many years. There was the Jervis worked on it, one of his last projects before he left. He's left 2 or 3 years ago, so I don't know if he did or not, because they don't credit anyone anymore, do they? But I feel really sorry for the people who've worked on this. The people who've read the rules are genuinely saying really good things about it. Apart from that one thing about the Space Marine, I've not heard any negative stuff apart from lack of stock. So it seems like it could be a really good thing. I hope that the stock issues don't end up making the sales a little bit lower, which means that when they come to review it and say, well, because that would be a real shame. But I think it'll be fine. I think it's heresy. I think heresy sells, and when they release a second wave, and there's going to be more rules, isn't there? Because we need drop pods.
So we've got we already know there is another book coming which will expand on the army. So stuff we have seen that we haven't got rules for, drop pods, Spartans,
jet bikes, bunch of stuff as well.
Jet bikes, all that kind of stuff. Like the Marine, there is a detachment type which is Vanguard, and a detachment type that is light armor, and we haven't seen any rules or models for Space Marines for them. So we know we're going to get more stuff then coming. So we know there's going to be a tranche stuff, and we know and it's ready. It'll be sitting there ready to go. I don't think
complete game relatively quickly, I think.
Yeah. Whereas with AT, I think one of the things that we discovered with AT is it actually took quite a while to become a complete game, because when GME launched, it was Warlords and Knights, which was fine to play start with, but it wasn't an interesting game. It wasn't until we got the Warhounds out as well, and you could put different mana pools together. Suddenly it was like, oh, this is a bigger game, and that took 3-4 months to get to that point. Whereas I think we'll find with LI, because that delay will. I think the delay will benefit in that way, that it'll allow people to build, will get stuff quicker. But I guess it'll depend where it sits with the old world schedule for release as well, because they'll have a plan for that, and we won't want too much stuff releasing over the top of each other.
AOS 4th edition supposedly next summer as well, isn't it? So that's the worst kept secret, isn't it? The Skaven against Stormcast, worst kept secret in the world.
Yeah,
it's probably going to be right. It's probably going to be out, but it's just too many big things coming out too close together. That's why I'd love them to go to was it 2 years, 3 year cycle at the moment, isn't it? Is it?
Could do with being a 4 year.
Or going back to 4 years and finishing all the army books each time before they get round, and almost giving people a year from the final
of a settled game
to a settled game before you get your new edition each time. And then people complaining about, oh, I've bought my new codex, and a month later, oh, it's
there's a new edition. But I mean, they've got enough games now where you could stretch a 4 year cycle, because you've got 2 core games, Age of Darkness, bunch of specialist games. You've got enough to fill a 4 year cycle now.
It's very logical, but also it probably doesn't make them as much money. And
no,
they've got shareholders, so that's going to make sense.
Yeah.
Right. Before, I think we this is going to be maybe our record, could be our longest one yet. But before we close down the show, Tom, do you want to give your podcast a proper shout out again?
Yeah.
Because you're doing events and planning events soon, so you want to give them all a shout out.
Yeah. So we're the Advancing Fire podcast. We are epic scale podcast, all things epic scale in the GW universe. So at the moment that is LI and AT, but we're deliberately leaving it open because I think we'll all be very excited if Battlefleet Heresy comes. I know me and Alex are quite keen to play some Aeronautica as well. We want to play with our planes as well. So it's kind of a general small scale Heresy, Age of Darkness kind of environment. We are, as I said, probably a little looser than Stu's Productions. We are three men with unresolved interpersonal issues yelling at each other. But it's good fun. Like I said, we do. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, and having produced podcasts with Stu, there is still a lot of structure and organization, and we do try and cover content. It's not just screaming into a microphone. So don't let me put off. But I wouldn't want anybody to come along and be surprised. It's a
just
bit
not
more
safe for work.
Content's
there, but it's not safe for work. So it's
don't put it on in the car with the kids.
Headphones on when your kids are around, or you're at work, and you can find.
And it's good. But and we also we like to run events. So I've run events for Incom Gaming over the last few years with Stu and things. And Alex has been involved with running events at Legion of Peterborough and Greens from the Warp. So we're kind of mashing it together. And Tom actually ran a bunch of events at Board in Brum for Titanicus. So we've 3 people who've run various events. So we currently have on the table, I've got a 1-day Learn to Play event at Incom Gaming for LI. So that's the 27th of January. Tickets to Incom Gaming. It is just bring your models, 1,000 points, come and learn the rules. It'll be 3 games at a really, really relaxed pace of 1,000 points. So just let's put models on the table and learn how to play and work our way through it. We'll do a little loyalist versus traitor narrative to match games up and have some fun and stuff. But it's a very relaxed kind of learning how to play the game.
It's a great game shop, and there's a bar.
And there's a bar, and there'll be lots of it, and you'll get Chip yelling at you to buy stuff. So it's always a good, fun environment. And my events are always a bit chaotic, but good laughs as well. Then we've got Greens from the Warp in April. We are running a 2-day Legion Imperialis event that will run along their Heresy Weekender. So they'll run a Age of Darkness event, and we will be running Legion Imperialis alongside that as well. 2 separate events at the moment. But who knows where we'll be in the future. But that'll be, I think we believe we're going to go for 2,000 points for that. So slightly bigger forces, might be 2,500. I can't remember what we've agreed on. It's in the last show we did. But it's going to be about 2,500 points. So that will be a event. come and play, painted armies, narrative, the works. And then in June, we will be involved again with Greetings from the Warp doing their specialist games weekender. So we will be doing LI one day, and then me and Alex will be running a Necromunda event the next day. But there will be Blood Bowl, Old World, Middle Earth with Dan.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Is that
Blood Bowl.
Blood Bowl, Middle Earth, LI, Necro. Yeah, 4. Blood Bowl, Necro, LI, Old World. Yeah, 5. There's 5. Middle Earth, Old World, LI and Necro, which me and Alex are doing both of, and then Blood Bowl. So there'll be lots of
and there'll be Coral Paint.
And Coral Paint will be up there. Yeah, Henry's running painting courses up there at the weekend as well. So we will be doing that. Will probably be slightly larger. I think we're going to go for one day, sort of maybe 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 points of LI that day. But we'll finalise all the details, and the packs will come out of that. But we're involved in that for the first half of the year. So plenty of events coming up. We like to run events. We like to get on and do stuff. I'll probably be running something later in the year back down in Cheltenham because Greetings from the North, sorry, I assume everybody knows and I shouldn't make those assumptions, is Northamptonshire based, just north of Northampton, that kind of side of the country, whereas Income Gaming's down in Cheltenham. So it's all south. I'm southwest, and then South Midlands, southeast-ish for Greetings from the Warp. But yeah, so we'll be involved with plenty of that. There'll be lots going on, plenty of hobby. Me and Alex are very keen hobbyers. Tom paints because Tom paints very well, but paints to play. Tom is very much, well, I yell at him lots of times, singing lots of songs about how he only plays if he's going to win, to generally keep him on his toes. But it's a nice mix between hobby and gaming on the podcast. You know, we've been focusing a lot on gaming lately because there's not been a lot to talk about modelling wise. But we're going to definitely do some more hobby stuff over the next few shows about.
You've got the toys now. It's been talking about toys are on the way, and they've landed now, haven't they? So
yeah, so we can sit down and actually, I think me and Alex are quite keen to get our first impressions of painting at this scale and the differences between painting at that scale. So there'll be lots of hobby talk and stuff on there as well as lots of abuse and throwing accusations at each other. And generally coming up with the oddest titles for the podcasts that I can find.
It's always the way. Always the way. It's been lovely to have you on and talk about this and probably clear up a few things that I was unsure of, me being lazy and not reading all the articles and reading the books and things as always. Dan, have you got anything for us before we go?
No, just the usual. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, etc. Thanks for engaging, especially those who've been involved in Stu's Discord channels, who've been kind enough to give us feedback. It's been much appreciated.
Absolutely. So head over, join the Discord. There'll be a link in the video description if you haven't already. It's growing at the moment, trying to kind of get a nice little bit of chat going on. It's always nice with YouTube where you haven't got anywhere to really talk about stuff other than in the comments, and you can't share pictures. So the Discord's got a space for you to share your own pictures and things. And then if you want to join the Patreon, you can as well, and you get access to loads and loads of more expanded Discord, but that's more to do with the channel than this podcast with Dan. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. Take care, and we'll catch you soon.